They say once the sun goes down, some roads in America come alive with the dead. These aren't just old highways or broken bridges, they're places where people vanish, engines die, and voices whisper from the dark. From bridges cursed by blood to roads haunted by lost souls, these are the paths no one dares to cross after midnight. Welcome to Cursed Bridges and Abandoned Roads in America You Should Never Cross at Night. If you love dark mysteries and real haunted places, then make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon, because more chilling stories are coming your way soon. Number 1 Old Alton Bridge, Goatman's Bridge, Texas. I had always laughed at the stories about Goatman's Bridge near Denton, Texas. People said a half-man, half-goat creature haunted the place, but I thought it was just small-town talk. That changed one night in the summer of 2022 when my cousin Josh and I decided to see the bridge for ourselves. It was around 10 p.m. when we parked near the old gravel road. The bridge looked harmless, just a rusty iron structure surrounded by thick woods. The air was heavy with the smell of moss and old metal. I remember Josh saying, "Man, this place feels off," but I told him to relax. I even joked that maybe the goat man would autograph my hat. We walked across the bridge with only our phone lights. The wood creaked under our feet, and something about the silence didn't feel right. Usually, you'd hear crickets or frogs out there, but that night, it was dead quiet. When we reached the middle, Josh tossed a rock into the creek below and yelled, "Goat man, we're here." The sound echoed. Then there was a low grunt from the darkness. It wasn't an echo. It came from the trees. We both froze. I turned my light toward the woods, and for a second, I saw eyes, two bright red eyes staring back at us. They were too far apart to be human. Josh whispered, "Do you see that?" Before I could answer, we heard heavy footsteps coming closer, slow and dragging, like something big was walking on hooves. The bridge shook slightly, and I swear I could smell something awful, like rotting meat mixed with wet fur. I grabbed Josh's arm and said, "Let's go." We ran back toward the car. The sound followed us, metal creaking, footsteps getting faster. When we jumped inside and slammed the doors, Josh's flashlight fell and rolled under the seat, but for a moment, the beam hit the bridge behind us. There was something standing in the middle, tall, dark, with long horns that caught the light. It didn't move. It just watched as I started the engine and sped off. We didn't talk for the rest of the drive. The next day, we went back during daylight. The bridge looked normal again, peaceful, even. But there were deep, strange prints in the dirt near where we stood the night before. Since then, I've never laughed at ghost stories again. Some places hold their secrets tight, and Goatman's Bridge is one of them. Number 2 Spook Bridge, Georgia. People in Valdosta, Georgia, have told ghost stories about Spook Bridge for decades. Some say it's cursed, others claim it's home to lost souls who never left. I didn't believe any of it until I went there myself one humid night in 2021. My friend Kayla and I were driving back from a late movie when she mentioned the bridge. "Let's check it out," she said with a grin. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. We followed an old road surrounded by thick woods until we reached the gate. The air was hot, sticky, and strangely quiet, not even the sound of crickets. The bridge itself looked like something out of a nightmare. Rusted steel rails, cracked pavement, and graffiti everywhere. The Suwannee River flowed dark and slow beneath it. We parked near the edge and got out, our phone lights cutting through the fog. Kayla laughed and said, "So this is Spook Bridge? Looks like it's falling apart." Then we heard it, faint footsteps behind us. We turned around. No one was there. Kayla brushed it off as an animal, but the air felt heavier with every step we took toward the middle. Suddenly, my phone flashlight flickered and went out. I tapped it, but it wouldn't turn back on. That's when I noticed something wet dripping onto my shoulder. I looked up, nothing above us but old beams. Kayla's voice shook when she whispered, "Do you smell that?" It smelled like old iron, or blood. A moment later, a shadow crossed the far end of the bridge. It moved slowly, like a person dragging one leg. We both froze. The shadow stopped, then started coming toward us. We couldn't see its face, just a tall, dark outline against the fog. Kayla screamed and bolted for the car. I followed, slipping on the cracked pavement. When I looked back one last time, the shadow was gone, but the sound of footsteps was right behind me, faster now. We jumped into the car, slammed the doors, and sped away. As we drove off, I glanced into the rearview mirror, and saw a single figure standing in the middle of the bridge, staring after us. People say Spook Bridge got its name because strange things happen there at night. I used to think it was just stories. Now, every time I pass that part of Georgia, I roll my windows up and keep driving, because some places aren't meant to be visited after dark. Number 3 Gold Brook Covered Bridge, Emily's Bridge, Vermont. I first heard about Emily's Bridge from a local in Stowe, Vermont, while on a road trip in 2022. He told me it wasn't just another old wooden bridge, it was haunted by a girl named Emily, who never left after a heartbreak that ended in tragedy. I thought it was just a story meant to scare tourists. But that night, I learned it was much more than that. It was close to midnight when I parked near the entrance of Gold Brook Covered Bridge. The wooden beams were old and dark, creaking softly in the wind. The sign beside it looked worn out, the letters almost gone. I turned off my engine, rolled down the window, and listened. Nothing. No wind, no insects, just a still, heavy silence. Curiosity pushed me to step out. My flashlight beam danced across the wooden floorboards as I walked slowly toward the center of the bridge. The air felt colder there, like I had stepped into another time. That's when I noticed faint scratch marks on the railing, long and deep, as if someone had clawed at it. I whispered, "Emily," half jokingly, expecting nothing. But something answered. It started as a soft sob, distant, almost too quiet to hear. Then it grew louder, echoing through the empty bridge. My breath caught in my throat. I turned around, thinking maybe someone was there, but the road behind me was empty. The sound seemed to move around me, circling, getting closer. Suddenly, I felt a sharp sting across my back, like fingernails dragging through my shirt. I spun around, but there was no one. My flashlight flickered, and for a split second, I saw a faint figure in a white dress at the far end of the bridge. Her head was bowed, long hair hiding her face. Then everything went quiet again. No crying, no movement, just the creaking wood under my boots. I ran back to my car, slammed the door, and sped off without looking back. My hands were shaking on the wheel, but I glanced once into the mirror, and I swear I saw her reflection sitting in the back seat for a split second before vanishing. The next morning, I checked my back in the mirror. There were 3 long scratches down my shoulder blade. No blood, but deep red marks like someone had dragged their nails down my skin. Since that night, I never laugh at ghost stories anymore. Emily's Bridge isn't just haunted, it's waiting for someone to listen to her cry. Number 4 Shipley Hollow Road, Tennessee. There's a narrow stretch of road outside Soddy Daisy, Tennessee, called Shipley Hollow Road. Locals say it's haunted by the ghost of a woman who died there more than 100 years ago. I never believed those old southern ghost tales, until I drove down that road myself one rainy night. It was October of 2021. I was heading home after visiting a friend who lived out in the country. My GPS said the fastest route was through Shipley Hollow Road. The rain had just started to fall, and the woods on both sides were so thick that my headlights barely reached the trees. The pavement turned to gravel, and fog began to creep up from the ground. A few minutes in, I noticed how quiet it was. My radio had lost signal, and even the rain seemed muffled. Then I saw something up ahead, what looked like a woman in a long white dress standing by the side of the road. I slowed down, thinking maybe she needed help. As I rolled closer, she turned toward me. Her face was pale, her eyes dark, and she looked terrified. I stopped and rolled down the window, asking if she was okay. She didn't answer, just raised her hand slowly and pointed behind my car. I looked into the rearview mirror and saw nothing but fog. When I turned back, she was gone. No sound, no footprints, nothing. My heart was racing. I pressed the gas and drove faster, but a few seconds later, I saw her again, this time in the middle of the road. I slammed the brakes, and the car skidded to a stop. She was staring right at me, her mouth moving like she was whispering something I couldn't hear. Then, out of nowhere, a shadow moved behind her, something tall and dark, almost human, but not quite. It reached toward her, and in an instant, both of them vanished into the fog. I didn't wait around. I hit the gas and didn't stop until I reached the highway. When I finally pulled over at a gas station, I realized my back seat was soaking wet, like someone had been sitting there, dripping water. I later learned that the woman people see on Shipley Hollow Road was said to be a bride who was attacked and killed on her wedding day over a century ago. Some folks claim she still wanders the road, searching for help that never came. Since that night, I've never taken that shortcut again. And every time I drive past the turnoff to Shipley Hollow Road, I can't help but glance at my mirror, half expecting to see a wet white dress behind me. Number 5 Crybaby Bridge, Ohio. I grew up hearing stories about Crybaby Bridge in Salem, Ohio. Everyone said if you stopped your car there at night and turned off the engine, you could hear a baby crying, sometimes even see handprints appear on your windows. I never believed it, until I went there myself one cold autumn night. It was late October 2022, just a few days before Halloween. My two friends, Ethan and Mia, convinced me to go with them. We reached the bridge around midnight. The road leading up to it was old and cracked, surrounded by woods that felt endless in the dark. The bridge itself was small, made of worn concrete, with a creek running quietly beneath it. We parked right in the middle. The night was still, except for the soft sound of water below. Ethan turned off the engine, and we all sat in silence, waiting. For a minute, nothing happened. Then Mia whispered, "Do you hear that?" At first, I thought it was the wind. But then I heard it too, faint, like someone crying far away. It wasn't the sound of an animal. It was a baby. A weak, desperate wail echoing from under the bridge. Ethan laughed nervously. "Probably just a prank," he said, but his voice didn't sound sure. I felt chills crawl down my spine. The crying got louder, closer. Suddenly, my car windows fogged up all at once, like someone was breathing heavily from outside. Mia gasped and pointed at the windshield. There were tiny handprints appearing on the glass. Not full-sized ones, small ones, like a child's. I panicked and turned the key, but the car wouldn't start. The crying grew sharper, like it was right beside us now. Ethan was yelling, Mia was crying, and I just kept twisting the key until finally the engine roared to life. I hit the gas, speeding off the bridge without looking back. When we stopped a few miles later, the fog was gone. But the handprints were still there, clear as day, pressed against the outside of the glass. Later, I found out the legend came from an old story, a young mother in the 1940s who, in a moment of despair, threw her baby into the river and jumped after him. Some say her spirit still searches for her child. Others say it's the baby who cries for his mother. I don't know what we heard that night. But I do know this, I'll never drive across Crybaby Bridge again, especially after midnight. Some cries aren't meant to be answered. Number 6 Clinton Road, New Jersey. If you've ever driven through West Milford, New Jersey, you've probably heard about Clinton Road, the most haunted road in America, they say. I never believed those stories growing up, but that changed one night in the summer of 2021 when my friend Eric and I took that drive ourselves. It was past midnight, and the road was empty, miles of twisting asphalt surrounded by thick, silent forest. The trees leaned in from both sides, blocking out the moonlight. My phone had lost all signal, and the car's radio only gave static. Eric laughed nervously and said, "Man, if we see that ghost kid tonight, I'm moving out of Jersey." We stopped at the infamous bridge, the one where people claim if you toss a coin into the water, a ghostly child throws it back. The air felt colder there, heavier somehow. I stepped out with my flashlight and dropped a coin over the edge. It hit the water with a faint splash, then silence. Eric started to tease me, but before he could say another word, something clinked against the car hood. We both froze. The coin, the same one I'd thrown, rolled down the windshield and stopped at the wiper. Neither of us spoke. The woods were dead quiet. Then, faintly, I heard it, footsteps under the bridge. Slow. Wet. Dragging through the water. I leaned over the edge, shining my light down, but there was nothing there. Just black water and the echo of each slow step. Suddenly, the air changed. The forest went completely still. Then Eric shouted, "Dude, look!" At the far end of the bridge stood a small figure, short, pale, like a child. The shape didn't move, didn't make a sound, just stared in our direction. My flashlight flickered once, twice, and when it came back on, the figure was gone. We didn't wait around. I jumped in the car and floored it. For a second, as we sped off, I caught something in the mirror, a glimpse of that same pale figure standing in the middle of the road, watching us leave. When we finally got back to town, neither of us said a word. The next day, Eric swore he saw wet footprints leading up his driveway. They say that the ghost of a little boy haunts Clinton Road, maybe the spirit of someone who drowned there years ago. I don't know if that's true, but one thing I'm sure of, whatever we saw that night wasn't alive. And it wanted us to know it was still there. Number 7 Interstate 4 I-4 Dead Zone, Florida. Everyone in Central Florida knows about the stretch of highway near Sanford called the I-4 Dead Zone. Drivers say their radios go crazy, GPS fails, and cars sometimes stall for no reason. Some even claim to see ghostly figures standing along the median at night. I never believed it, not until I experienced it myself last summer. I was driving home from Orlando to Daytona Beach around 2 a.m. The highway was almost empty, just my headlights cutting through the dark. As I approached the part of I-4 known for strange activity, my radio started to crackle with static. I thought maybe it was just bad reception. Then, for a split second, a voice broke through, faint and whispering. It sounded like a woman saying, "Turn around." I froze. I turned the volume down, but the whisper kept repeating, soft, almost pleading. My skin prickled. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself I was just tired. But when I glanced at my GPS, the screen had gone blank. Just a frozen blue dot in the middle of nowhere. Then the car shuddered. The lights flickered, and the engine began to sputter. I pulled over to the shoulder, heart pounding. The air outside was thick and humid, but when I stepped out, it felt icy cold, wrong for a Florida night. That's when I saw the shapes on the other side of the road. 4 figures, faint and gray, standing together in the median. At first, I thought they were people, maybe construction workers. But they weren't moving. They were just there, staring at me. I blinked, and for a second, they looked clearer, a man, a woman, and 2 small children. The woman was holding the youngest one's hand. I remembered the story right then, how, back in the 1800s, a family of German immigrants had died of yellow fever and were buried right where this section of the interstate was later built. Locals said their graves were disturbed during construction, and ever since, the road had been cursed. I got back into my car, turned the key, nothing. I tried again and again, praying under my breath. Finally, the engine roared to life. I hit the gas and didn't stop until I was miles away. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I swear I saw them one last time, standing in the fog, still watching. The next morning, I checked my car. The radio worked fine, the GPS too. But my dashboard clock was stuck at 2:17 a.m., the exact time my car had died. I don't know if that stretch of I-4 is truly cursed, but I'll never drive through the dead zone again after dark. Some roads don't just take you somewhere, they take something from you. Number 8, Bray Road, Wisconsin. Bray Road, just outside Elkhorn, Wisconsin, looks like any quiet country road, narrow, lined with fields and woods, and barely lit after dark. But locals whisper about something that hunts there, a creature people call the Beast of Bray Road. I used to laugh at those stories. Then one night in 2022, I stopped laughing for good. I was driving home from my late shift at a diner. It was close to 1 a.m., fog hanging low across the road. My headlights cut through it just enough for me to see a few yards ahead. About halfway down Bray Road, I noticed something crouched by the ditch, like a large dog eating roadkill. I slowed down, trying to see what it was. That's when it stood up. Whatever it was, it wasn't a dog. It was tall, over 6 feet, covered in dark, matted fur, with a long snout and glowing yellow eyes that caught my headlights. My stomach dropped. It just stared at me, shoulders heaving, like it was breathing hard. I froze. The thing tilted its head slowly, then started walking toward the car, on 2 legs. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. It moved like a man but looked like a wolf. I slammed my foot on the gas, tires screeching on the wet pavement. I looked in my mirror, and to my horror, it was chasing me, running fast, almost keeping up with my car. Its eyes were locked on me the whole time. Then, just as suddenly, it dropped to all fours and vanished into the cornfield beside the road. By the time I reached town, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep hold of the wheel. I pulled over under a streetlight and tried to calm down. That's when I noticed deep scratches across the side of my car, long, ragged marks, like claws had dragged along the metal. The next morning, I told my boss what happened. He didn't laugh. He just nodded slowly and said, "You're not the first to see it. Folks around here know better than to drive Bray Road after midnight." Later that week, I went back during daylight to convince myself it had all been in my head. The road looked peaceful, just empty fields and quiet woods. But near the ditch where I'd first seen it, I found something half buried in the mud, a patch of dark fur and a deep paw print, larger than my hand. I left right then and never went back. Some say the Beast of Bray Road is a werewolf. Others think it's something ancient that's always lived there. I don't know what I saw that night, but I know this: when you're driving down that lonely road and something looks back at you from the dark, don't stop. Number 9, Shades of Death Road, New Jersey. I grew up hearing about a road in Warren County called Shades of Death Road. The name itself sounded like something from a horror movie, but locals said it was real, a stretch of asphalt winding through thick woods, with an unsettling silence that pressed on you the moment you entered it. I never believed in ghost stories, but that changed the night I decided to see it for myself. It was a foggy Friday night when I drove there with my friend, Kevin. We thought it would be fun, just 2 guys exploring a creepy legend. The road was darker than I imagined, covered by overhanging trees that blocked the moonlight. The deeper we went, the quieter everything became. Even the crickets stopped. Halfway down the road, we noticed what looked like smoke drifting across the pavement. Kevin said it was fog, but it wasn't moving like fog. It twisted, almost like it was alive. When I slowed down, we saw something standing on the edge of the road, a pale woman, wearing what looked like a torn white dress. Her head tilted slightly as if she was listening. I blinked, and she was gone. Kevin laughed nervously, saying I imagined it, but he was gripping the door handle tight. A few minutes later, we passed the lake, Ghost Lake, locals called it. The surface was still as glass, reflecting our headlights. Then, just as we drove by, something hit the car, hard. Like a hand slapping the side. I slammed on the brakes. No one was there. The woods were silent, the air heavy. When we got out to check, the side mirror had a handprint on it. A small one. Like a child's. We didn't stay long after that. As we drove off, Kevin looked into the side mirror and whispered, "She's walking behind us." I didn't look. I just pressed the gas until we were back on the highway. People say Shades of Death Road got its name from old murders, highway bandits, and a plague that wiped out families long ago. But after that night, I think the truth is simpler. Some places never forget what happened there. And the dead don't like to be disturbed. Number 10, Archer Avenue, Illinois. I've driven down Archer Avenue more times than I can count, but one night still haunts me. It was a cold November evening, just outside Chicago, when I was heading home from work. The road was nearly empty, just me, my old pickup truck, and the faint glow of streetlights cutting through the mist. Anyone from the area knows Archer Avenue's reputation. Locals call it one of the most haunted roads in Illinois, especially near Resurrection Cemetery. I never believed the stories about the girl in white, the vanishing hitchhiker, until that night. It started when I saw her standing by the side of the road. A young woman, maybe in her early 20s, wearing a pale white dress that looked out of place in the cold. Her hair was golden, and she held one hand out like she was asking for a ride. I slowed down and rolled down my window. "You okay? Need a lift?" I asked. She nodded quietly and opened the door without saying a word. As she climbed in, I noticed her dress was damp, and her skin looked pale, almost gray under the dashboard light. She told me her name was Mary and that she needed to get home. Her voice was soft, distant, like she wasn't really there. I asked where she lived, and she pointed down the road. "Near the cemetery," she whispered. We drove in silence for a few minutes until I saw the gates of Resurrection Cemetery ahead. When I looked over to ask if this was her stop, she was gone. The passenger seat was empty. The door hadn't opened, and there was no sound. Just the smell of something faint, like roses and wet earth. I pulled over, heart pounding, and saw a faint figure standing by the cemetery fence. It was her. The same girl. She turned toward me, her face lit by the dim headlights, and then she faded away into the mist. When I told a local diner owner about it the next morning, he just nodded and said, "You met Resurrection Mary. She's been walking that road for nearly 100 years now." Ever since that night, I've taken a different route home. Because on Archer Avenue, the dead don't always rest, sometimes, they're just looking for a ride back home.